Started in a minute or so. So please take this time and silence all your cell phones. Great. This event is being live streamed, so now would be the best time to silence your cell phones. You'll find some cards on your chairs. If you have any questions for our speakers today, just write them on the cards, legibly please, so I can read them. And we'll have staff members come by and collect them and pass them over to us. I'm going to ask as many questions as I can.
Poonam, can you be a little louder? We're not able to
reserve chairs for?
Hello. Ambassador, check if your mic.
Hello.
I don't think the microphones are working.
Is yours on? No?
Well, we can find out.
Hello?
Is this audible outside the back? Yeah?
Am I audible?
Thank you. Thanks so much.
It should be.
Neha, why don't you just stand in the back row and see if you can hear each of them?
Can everyone hear me?
It's on.
Yes? No?
Say something?
It's on. It's on now.
Yeah.
All right.
Tejasvi,
Hello?
say something?
Okay.
Namaste, can you hear me? Yeah, thanks.
All right, everybody, if you can just get settled. Thank you.
Taranjit, maybe yours is not on. It is on, so can I just put it a little higher?
Right.
Just.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the National Press Club, the place where news happens. I'm Poonam Sharma, the treasurer of the National Press Club, editor at Global StratView, and columnist for the Mumbai-based publication Sakal Avtaran. On April 22nd, 2025, there was a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, Kashmir, in which 25 Indians and 1 Nepali citizen were killed. On May 7th, the Indian Defense Forces launched Operation Sindoor as a military strike on targets believed to be terrorist sites in Pakistan. Following Operation Sindoor and the establishment of an ongoing ceasefire, India dispatched multi-party parliamentary delegations globally to provide clarity and communicate the ground realities of the situation. Our visiting delegation in the United States, they have been engaging with think tanks, academic institutions, and media representatives to discuss the India-US strategic partnership and highlight India's position on terrorism. So today we're joined by 4 members of that delegation. Right next to me, none of these need any introduction, but however, Dr. Shashi Tharoor is an author, politician, and former international diplomat, a 4-term member of parliament. He represents Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, in the Lok Sabha. A member of the Indian National Congress, he has served as Minister of State for External Affairs as well. And he's currently the chair of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs. Mr. Milind Deora is a former union minister and member of parliament from Mumbai South. Mr. Tejasvi Surya was elected to the 17th Lok Sabha at the age of 28. He represents Bengaluru South in Parliament. And of course, Ambassador Taranjit Singh Sandhu is a retired Indian diplomat who was ambassador of India to the United States from February 2020 to January 2024. He's also served as High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka from January 2017 to 2020. So please join me in giving them all a warm National Press Club welcome. So Dr. Tharoor, over to you for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Poonam. Well, I'll keep those brief so we can get straight into a conversation. Poonam has already explained who we are and why we're here and who we're meeting. Broadly speaking, we have been to 4 countries already on the way here, though our first stop when we left Delhi was indeed in New York, so we could go and pay tribute at the 9/11 memorial and convey, if you like, our strong solidarity with victims of terrorism everywhere, since 9/11 accounted for people from so many different nationalities. We then went on to Guyana, where we met the government, legislators. In every place we met government, legislators, think tanks, and media. We went on from Guyana to Panama, from Panama to Colombia, from Colombia to Brazil, and here we are now with all of you. At the end of the Memorial Day recess, spending a day on Capitol Hill has been extremely rewarding because we were able to meet a number of congressmen and senators. And in fact, we've just come from a meeting with half a dozen senators who came up and said hello, all of them associated with either the Foreign Relations Committee or the Intelligence Committee. So broadly, what we are seeking to do in every country is to explain our version of events, our experience of the last few weeks, to seek the solidarity and understanding of those we meet and speak to. And I'm very pleased to say that so far, our batting average is over 100. In other words, every single person we have met so far has immediately not only condemned resolutely the terrorist attack upon India and expressed their outrage and their sympathy, but they have also explicitly endorsed India's right to defend itself against terrorism. And this kind of understanding has been most welcome. We've had broader conversations everywhere because India is not going to be defined by one particular incident. We are a country with great ambitions for ourselves, for our people. We are focused on our economic development, on our growth. We are focused on technology, on pharmaceuticals, and the whole range of activities that have marked us out as a significant player to be reckoned with in the world. And we're very happy to continue doing all of that. In fact, for us, this terrorist episode was a distraction. It was a most unfortunate and even frustrating experience to have this inflicted upon us at a time when we were focusing on growth. In fact, in Kashmir, it's very striking. The previous summer, we'd seen more tourism and more tourists coming than Aspen, Colorado gets every year. And in the course of this year, the first few months of this year, there'd been a 100% increase on the corresponding months of last year. So Kashmir was booming. Ordinary Kashmiris are benefiting from vast numbers of tourists coming in, putting money into their hands and their pockets. It was a lovely time. And here's this innocent group of holidays, tourists on a dappled meadow in Kashmir, being murdered in cold blood by people coming and asking their religion and shooting them between the eyes. It really was a sickening outrage. And the nation rose as one to support whatever the government chose to do, and what the government chose to do in the end was what most of us would have wanted. I myself wrote an op-ed 2 days after Pahalgam, which was headlined, "Hit Hard, Hit Smart." And that's exactly what the government did. It hit hard, but it hit smart. It started off making a very clear signal this is only about retribution for terrorism. That is, hit only the 9 bases of established known terror organizations listed on the US State Department's terror designate list, listed on the United Nations Terrorism Sanctions Committee, the 1267 Committee's list of designated terrorists. And we only hit those. The government publicly announced and told the Pakistanis too, we have not hit any Pakistan government sites, we haven't hit any Pakistan civilian sites, we haven't hit any military sites either. We've just hit terrorist infrastructure. And as far as we're concerned, that's it, we're done. Pakistan chose to retaliate in the most indiscriminate and irresponsible fashion, shelling civilian areas, hitting Sikh Gurdwara, hitting the convent of the Carmelites of Mother Mary in Poonch, killing people in their homes, on the streets, 19 people killed, 59 hospitalized with grave injuries. This was obviously something we had to respond to, and every time Pakistan hit, we hit back. But each time, if you were to go back and look at the briefings the government gave each morning, the message was very clear. We are hitting them because they're hitting us. If they stop, we'll stop. And after 88 hours, the Pakistani Director General of Military Operations reached out to his Indian counterpart and said, let's call it off, and we called it off. We had no desire to persist with this war because, as I said, we have better things to do. It's just a tragic situation that has been needlessly inflicted upon us. And I say to all of you, when we seek understanding for what we've done, it's not in a warlike spirit. We're very conscious we are the heirs of Mahatma Gandhi, a legacy of ahimsa and nonviolence. But we will also honor his advice to stay firm, to live without fear, to have the self-respect, never to bow down, never to surrender to this kind of terrorism. And we are going to continue. If they continue, we will continue. If they will let things alone, we will let things alone. Because we have, as I said, a very clear focus on our own development. I think I'll leave it there, not because I have no more to say, there's plenty to say, but I would rather respond to your questions, and my colleagues are also ready to add their words to these remarks of mine when you have questions for them.
All right.
The floor is yours.
We have questions that have
Oh,
been
I'm sorry.
submitted in
You'll
advance.
ask the question.
Yeah. And if the audience has more, they can pass them forward as well.
Sure, you'll pass the questions to Poonam.
Right.
Okay.
So one question that we've gotten from several members of the press
Sure.
is why the name Operation Sindoor?
Right.
If you could just briefly address that for those who are not familiar.
Right. Well, Operation Sindoor, actually, I thought was a brilliantly chosen name. The Sindoor, in case some Americans obviously don't know about this, is a vermilion mark that is applied to the center of the forehead of married women in the Hindu tradition. It's widely practiced. Some non-Hindus do it too, but more for decorative purposes. But strictly speaking, the Sindoor is applied at the time of the marriage ceremony and is worn every day thereafter by married women. So we were very conscious that these brutal terrorists, who, by the way, shot men in front of their wives and children, but spared the women. And when the one wife screamed out, "Kill me too," she was told, "No, you go back and tell them what we've done." That was why the women were spared. It was a horrendous act. But that Sindoor had essentially been wiped off the foreheads of 26 Indian women, or 26, I was going to say Hindu women, but one of them actually was a Christian. But the Sindoor had been wiped off the rest by these terrorist actions. And so we wanted, first of all, to avenge that act of wiping off the Sindoor. But secondly, it's no accident that the color of the Sindoor is that bright vermilion red, which is not far from the color of blood. And in many ways, there is a Hindi expression that the khoon ka badla khoon, here Sindoor ka badla khoon hoga, that is blood in response to what they've done to the Sindoor.
All right, Ambassador Sandhu, there's a question for you. Given your experience in Washington, how would you assess the U.S. administration's current position on the India-Pakistan standoff? Has there been a shift in tone or policy from previous administrations?
So I would give three aspects which the American policy and larger population needs to keep in mind. First is the terrorist angle. As our leader just mentioned, that this was a thought out, a focused operation, essentially on the terrorists and terrorist strike. Kindly look at all those terrorists and terrorist organizations. Are they friends of United States? And what kind of poison they spread about the United States? Number two, there is a very clear strategic geopolitical angle there. I think one of the biggest neighbors of India is very much involved. And I think that has a certain clarity in the United States. I'm sure you understand who and what I'm meaning. The third part, I would say, especially to the audience in the United States, is the democratic angle, the democracy. You know what kind of elections were held, the threats which the army in Pakistan has been facing. And in order to surmount those, this is being utilized, ranks are being given, other challenges, especially the democracy part, is being put behind. So I think any American policy framer, when he looks at these three aspects, I think the choice is very clear. And do keep in mind that these are the same terrorists who have threatened the United States in the past, and you have just witnessed terrorism here and can do it in the future too. So actually, India is fighting the battle on behalf of the world, especially United States too.
Daniel, if I may come in, is it?
Sure.
I said to Dr. Tharoor that being in America is my alma mater. So I had the opportunity to live here, study here, not just get my degree in business management, but I'm also a student of American music, American culture. And in addition to the shared values points that Ambassador Sandhu spoke about, we share democratic values, pluralistic values. I think there are other fundamentals based on which this relationship between India and the US is completely transformed. We both understand cross-border terrorism very well. We understand Pakistan-sponsored terrorism extremely well. Broadening that scope of cooperation in that area is extremely critical. That has been growing in the last few years and few decades. And that's why, to Dr. Tharoor's point, we received a very, very warm welcome on Capitol Hill. Congressmen, senators chairing the House Foreign Relations Committee, people associated with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the India caucus issued unequivocal, unconditional statements in support of India and condemning Pakistan. But there's also culture and people, and that relationship has also been strengthened considerably in the last 10 or 15 years. And the most critical is in the area of trade and investments. We're hopeful that a bilateral trade agreement will be concluded between both countries very soon. And I think both countries, after COVID, have begun to relook at and rethink their supply chains, look at reshoring jobs to America, to India. Both have an America first, India first policy, bring employment opportunities back to our countries. So I think the basis today of that relationship is largely in the realm of trade and investment. Okay. And I'd like to, Poonam, just quote a statistic because I think it's important for the American media to take that to the American people. Not only are Indian investments in America growing rapidly, but American investments in India have also delivered massive results to investors back home. Few examples of that, a company like Blackstone, which has deployed about $50 billion in India's real estate. Today, the second largest real estate market for Blackstone outside of America is India. They plan to double that investment in a few years. Companies like BlackRock, companies like Brookfield own primary and secondary instruments to the tune of $15 to $30 billion. So it's a very critical partnership that is based on economic cooperation and on mutual investments.
Okay, so since we're talking about trade, just yesterday, Secretary Letnick said that the Trump administration is upset with some of India's policy, including purchasing arms from the Russians. Do you think Trump has a different view of the Indo-US trade relationship than his predecessors?
Do you want to go for that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, as far as I'm aware, this may not be an entirely, shall we say, up-to-date answer because I'm not involved in none of us is involved in the trade talks, but we have actually seen a steady change in the pattern of dependence on certain weapon suppliers. Historically, yes, we were major suppliers of Russian equipment. We still need a lot of Russian spare parts and so on, but it's come down a lot from the peak. The comparison I would give you is Pakistan, where 81% of their weapon systems and imports are from China. We don't have that kind of dependence. We've diversified. We have American weaponry. We're very much in the market for more. Whatever the Americans are prepared to discuss with us and sell us, we certainly hope will move forward. We've got French weapons. We have French aircraft. We've also got a lot of Israeli equipment. So we're diversifying. It's not that we are particularly dependent on weapons from any one country, though there was a time when this comment may have been true, that is, that we were overly dependent on the Russian weapons in the days of the Soviet Union particularly. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of the situation today.
Okay. Well, you mentioned aircraft, and the question in a lot of people's minds is how many aircraft did India lose? We do know that there was some loss of aircraft, but not how many in this latest conflict.
we're not military folks, and our military are the only ones who really keep track of all of these things. But, I think the important message that came out was, whatever may or may not have happened in the course of a conflict, neither side, by the way, talks about losses very much. And that's partially because you know very well that operational details are very closely held with the senior military people. But I can tell you one thing, whatever may or may not have happened, look what happened on what turned out to be the last night of the conflict, when India not only effectively struck 11 airfields of the Pakistani military, but there are commercially available, publicly available satellite pictures showing the extensive damage done. There's been craters on the runway, there have been operational command centers that have been bust by these Indian bombs, and just yesterday, the Pakistanis publicly admitted that Indian strikes were so wide-ranging and effective, they struck from as far as Hyderabad in South Pakistan to Peshawar in the northwest. So it looks very clear that whatever damage the Pakistanis believe they may have inflicted on India, it wasn't sufficient to prevent India from inflicting such extensive damage on Pakistan that they decided to request us to stop, which we're very happy to do.
Okay, so India's maintained that the ceasefire occurred when the Pakistani DGMO called the Indian DGMO, requesting for a cessation of hostilities. Pakistan has been playing up the role of the US, and President Trump, even as recent as, I guess, a couple days ago, he keeps saying that he used trade to stop the war.
That's not the impression I have. I can tell you that it was a public record that there were calls coming from various foreign ministers to our foreign minister, to our national security advisor. The US was amongst the most active in this regard, and that Secretary Rubio spoke to his Indian counterpart, Jaishankar. He also, in his second hat of NSA, spoke to his counterpart, Mr. Doval. At one point, Mr. Vance, the vice president, called our prime minister. So there was a lot of calls being made, and that's true also the foreign ministers of the UAE, of Saudi Arabia, France, and so on. Many countries were concerned. My understanding is, and none of these calls was trade ever mentioned, not one. And certainly our information is that from our side, we gave a consistent response throughout, which corresponds to what I've just said to all of you, that we are only taking retribution for a terrorist attack. We are not interested in prolonging this conflict. If Pakistan hits us, we will hit back because we have a right of self-defense. If Pakistan stops, we'll stop. So we didn't need persuading to stop. And that message was given regularly to everybody else who called. I know that some of this is actually out on the sort of Twitter timeline of our foreign minister. So it was an open thing that we're talking to people and letting them know we're ready to call this off anytime the others do. And the others were the ones who were prolonging it. Only Pakistan had one foot on the escalatory ladder, not India. In every case, they initiated, we retaliated. When they stopped, we stopped. That's the way that came to an end.
Right. So critics argue that India hasn't presented enough concrete evidence to the international community regarding Pakistan's role in the Pahalgam attack. And as per the Indian government, the success of Operation Sindoor as well. How would you respond to that? Mr. Surya, would you like to take that question?
Poonam, I think this is not the first time that Pakistan has orchestrated an attack against India and claimed to not have any role in it. The very first attack that they orchestrated was right after independence, 1947. They sent Pakistani armed military men, and they said it was Pakistani raiders who went. They said, we have nothing to do with it. But then it was the Pakistani army. This was not the first time. Even in 1998, Kargil, it was again Pakistani military which was directly involved in the aggression. But they again claimed no responsibility. So much so that when the soldiers the bodies of the soldiers were retrieved, they were not ready to take them back. Can you expect, is there any other country in the world that would do that? Pathankot, we invited them to conduct a joint operation in one of our air bases, 2611 in the city of Mumbai. Joint investigation happened in Mumbai. Dossiers were presented, not just to Pakistan, but to the international community. Pakistan did nothing. This time around in Pahalgam, within about 30-40 minutes after the attack, a front called the Resistance Front claimed credit for orchestrating this attack. And it was on their website for almost a whole full day until somebody in Pakistan, their handlers told them to take it down. And it was in the United Nations Security Council when the press statement was to be released. It was Pakistan, and it was at the support of China that it was removed, the reference to TRF. And the picture that has been going around on social media, where funerals of the terrorists attended by military-clad army men, is again a testimony to the deep nexus between Pakistani army, Pakistani ISI, Pakistani government, and the terrorists. So this has gone on for a very long time. And I just want to, on the objective that we had set out to achieve. The first attack was with respect to the 9 terrorist bases. All the 9 terrorist bases that were attacked are on the UNSC 1267 list. It was not that
Right.
India came up with a fictitious list. And the attacks on the 10th, 2 things prove India's capability. One, there are multiple satellite images available in public domain
Right, and we've
that
covered,
has been accepted. And the fact that the Pakistani DGMO called the Indian DGMO, his counterpart, and requested for a ceasefire is further proof.
so in your visits to the countries that you visited so far, has the delegation presented more concrete evidence of Pakistan's complicity in the attack?
Look, evidence is a curious way of putting it, because in very many cases, in fact, in the bulk of the cases of the more than 40 to 50 terrorist attacks inflicted on India since the turn of the century, in every case, Pakistan has denied it, and in every case, their complicity has been established. Denial is standard fare for them. So you found Mumbai, 2008, where 170 people, including many American citizens, were killed in 5 locations in Mumbai. What happened? The Pakistanis said it wasn't them. Immediately, one of the killers was captured alive, and he turned out not only to be Pakistani, his family, his address, where he was trained, who trained him, everything was out there. You had the chilling recordings taken by Western intelligence agencies as well as Indian ones of the voice of the Pakistani handler giving minute-by-minute instructions to the killers in Mumbai to continue killing. This kind of evidence, plus the evidence from the interrogation Kasab, was also provided to the Pakistanis. Entire dossiers were put together.
Right.
Not one person has been prosecuted, not one person has been punished by the Pakistanis. The US, using the same evidence, has jailed David Coleman Headley for planning and plotting this attack, and Tahawoor Rana has been extradited to India, who is a Chicago-based conspirator in this particular thing. So we're showing you that despite the collection of evidence, there is actually no corrective action. So beyond the point, one piece of evidence, Poonam, is a long pattern of conduct. And don't ever forget that the Pakistanis also said they had no idea where Osama bin Laden was until he was found in a safe house right next to an army camp in a cantonment city. So Pakistan denials are not worth anything, frankly. Second is that the Resistance Front is a known proxy for the LET, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, headquartered in Pakistan. And the TRF evidence was given first, not just for this thing, but for their activities, was given first to the UN committee by India in December of 2023. So we've had repeated attempts, 4 attempts, to get the TRF listed. The fact that the TRF then claimed credit for this grotesque attack and did so in less than an hour after it took place, when most of the world didn't even know it had happened, shows their complicity. And third, frankly, our intelligence agencies don't unleash the Indian army or the Indian military without serious work. They have done their bit, and they have identified with names and photographs 4 of the 5 killers, 2 of whom are Pakistani, and 2 of whom were known to be locals who had gone to Pakistan for training 10 years ago and who clearly came back at
So
the start. So we are 100% sure we have the evidence we need. Those kinds of classified evidence that will not be shared the public, I'm sure.
No, not with the public,
But
but
Poonam-
With the intelligence agencies of friendly countries, I'm sure there's been some conversation.
But Poonam, can I answer a
Sure.
specific question? You asked us whether the countries we visited have brought this up. Firstly, nobody will bring it up because, as Dr. Tharoor mentioned, Pakistan has no international credibility. And the first response we received from anyone we've met, from Guyana to the United States, is that we understand Pakistan is a, if you want to call it a rogue state, a banana republic. And people very clearly understand that India has nothing to gain by responding to Pakistan unless there's credible evidence.
That's right.
So that point is a very critical point. That's why when you ask this question, I sometimes wonder who would be asking us to prove something against
Exactly.
Pakistan when the whole world knows that.
All right, I
From
know.
Osama bin Laden to 2611 to being a terror haven. People understand India has a lot going for it. People understand both countries attained independence around the same time. Pakistan is today a failed state. It's dependent on IMF bailouts. India is the fourth largest economy in the world. It's growing at 6.5%. We have nothing to gain by engaging with Pakistan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Deora. I just want to keep moving to it because we have so many questions from journalists here. So David Brunstrom from Reuters, what role has the U.S. played in encouraging talks between India and Pakistan?
I think the US has understood for some time now that India has a very clear position that there will be no talks with a gun pointed at our head. It's not that we can't talk to Pakistan. I was joking the other day, we can speak all the languages they can speak. And we're very happy to dialogue with them in any of those languages. The problem is we will not dialogue with people who are pointing a gun at our heads. I mean, frankly, if your neighbor unleashes his Rottweilers to bite your children, and in fact to do worse to your children, and then says, let's talk. You think you're going to talk to him until he either unleashes those Rottweilers or locks them up in a kennel or puts them to sleep? It's as simple as that. You're not going to talk to people who are pointing guns at your temples. It's not going to happen.
We have another question from Sriram Lakshman of The Hindu. What concrete outcomes have been agreed upon or do you expect will be agreed upon from this visit in terms of U.S. actions with regard to Pakistan?
Forgive me, may I look at that? I seem to have a slight audibility problem here with what concrete outcomes have been agreed upon, I see. We aren't really here to negotiate outcomes. That's the job of the government. Our job is to enhance understanding, to clarify our position and to explain if there are any questions or misapprehensions on the part of our interlocutors. We'll be very happy to address them. There wasn't a specific seek on our part beyond that. It's not that we've come here saying, would you do this for us? That's not what this is all about. And that's true, by the way, every country we've been to. We're just saying, this is our position, we want you to understand, and if you have any questions, we'll answer them, but that's it. We're not asking them to do anything other than to understand our point of view, to express their solidarity, and to stand with us if it happens again. I mean, we have no illusions. These buildings we've destroyed in the terror camps can be built again, 6 months, 9 months, who knows? The problem is, if they think they can keep doing this to us, they've got another thing coming, because we are not going to take it. If they hit us, we will hit them back. And we want the world to understand not only what just happened, but what could happen again if Pakistan does not control these elements on its soil.
Ambassador Sandhu, what further diplomatic or economic actions does India plan to take through institutions like the United Nations or the Financial Action Task Force?
I think there's already been public statements on that. I think most important aspect is for the entire world community to understand and urge the Pakistan leadership to move away from terrorism as part of its policy. Whatever actions need to be taken or convincing needs to be done by whoever is speaking to the leadership, since you have a parliamentary delegation from there, or whatever parliament is there, I think that needs to be told to them that it is time to come back to the Committee of Nations and look at the relationship between the United States and India. It has transformed into a partnership. You talk about healthcare, affordable healthcare. India plays an important role. Go to the CVS pharmacy and you will see. Talk about the energy partnership. Talk about IT, digital, the new emerging technologies, education. You know that the 300,000 Indian students who are here, who are 2/3 of them in STEM areas, they bring value and competitive edge to United States. That's the kind of country and participation and the relationship that is. I think everybody needs to urge the Pakistan government to move towards that, not towards using terrorists and terrorism.
We're also very happy, I think, all of us as a delegation, that the Axiom space shuttle, which will be going to the International Space Station,
Yes.
the second in command, the pilot, is an Indian Air Force pilot. And to Mr. Sandhu's point, that's what we want to export. We want to export culture, we want to export engineers, we want to export technology, and that's what we really bring to the world. It's unfortunate that a young politician from Pakistan, who should be spending more of his time in fixing his own country, is in the US, defending some of those who may be responsible for assassinating his mother. So that's the reality and that's the difference.
We have, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add something to the previous question. You keep talking, and we hear this a lot from people who are well-meaning, and why don't you talk to the Pakistan? Who do we talk to? See, it's not that we haven't tried this before. We've talked to them many times, and there was a period between 2003 and 2008 where we were talking both publicly, privately, and through a famous back channel, famous later, between a special envoy of the Prime Minister of India and the general running Pakistan, General Musharraf. With all of this, in 2008, we had a very, very pro-peace government in Pakistan, led by President Zardari. His foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, was in Delhi to sign a generously liberalized visa agreement with India when the terrorists struck in 26/11. So we're discovering the people we talk to are either unable or unwilling to control the elements who are hurting us. So if you have talking to a civilian government, and the civilian government doesn't even know that the military is up to sending and dispatching terrorists across the border to kill us, who do we talk to? Why should we talk?
Okay. Our next question is from Paul Beckett, who's a National Press Club member, and he spent a decade as the Wall Street Journal's South Asia Bureau Chief and Asia Editor. He's asked, how much was India's military response designed to send a message to China, which supports Pakistan, about the capabilities of the Indian military?
What was India's? The exact...
How much was India's military response designed to send a message to China, which supports Pakistan?
I wouldn't speculate on the intentions. Our response was to hit the enemy that was hitting us, which happened to be Pakistan. The fact that they were using Chinese weapons and we were bypassing some of the Chinese radar defenses and the famous sort of Chinese networked system, where apparently the Chinese system is that they lock into the other side's aircraft. The radar immediately sends a signal to the plane that sends an immediate launch instruction to the missile. It all comes, and that's supposed to be the great sort of Chinese kill chain we read about in the newspapers. So I don't think that when India decided to bypass some of those threats and hit the airfields it did on the 9th, 10th night, I don't think they were worrying about who gets the message. They want to make sure that the Pakistanis got the message and they got the rough end of what we were sending them, which they did. And frankly, I think many of us feel very proud of our defense forces for having done this. I think those whose job it is to study comparative weapon systems, which is not our preoccupation, they can draw conclusions for themselves. But I do believe that what happened on the night of the 9th, 10th speaks for itself, and even more so, the immediate reaction of the Pakistanis the next morning to call off the conflict also speaks very vividly for itself. And maybe that's the message the Chinese will have to look at. But I don't want to speculate about China.
Also, not to forget how the stock market performed.
All right. So a lot of people that I talk to who don't know much about India and Pakistan, but they do know that both are nuclear armed. There's fear in a lot of people that, India and Pakistan tensions flare up regularly. They're both armed nuclear nations. So how seriously is the threat of nuclear engagement being taken, and what steps are being pursued to ensure such a scenario is avoided?
Okay, first of all, as I say, don't talk about tensions between India and Pakistan. Frankly, we have no tensions with Pakistan unless and until they start acting against us like this. We are very happy to leave them alone. And we have no grudge against them. Let them develop their own country or not develop their own country or let the army ruin their country. That's entirely up to them. It's not our problem. So we are not creating any, there's nothing we're demanding out of Pakistan right now, except that they dismantle their terror infrastructure, right? So please don't, there's a big flaw in some of these assumptions that there is equivalence between India and Pakistan as if they're two sides of a chain. The fact is that there can be no equivalence between terrorists and their victims. There can be no equivalence between a country that's needling another country and sending terrorists across to bleed it with a death by 1,000 cuts, in the famous phrase of a Pakistani general, and those who are trying to defend their own territory, their own sovereignty, their own people. There is no equivalence. So as far as we're concerned, please don't think of it in those terms at all. But since you've asked, the bottom line is we, in all our actions, have acted so responsibly that we are a long way shy of anything remotely approaching a nuclear threshold. When I say that our first strikes were only at terror bases, we did not even hit any Pakistani military installations until they started sending missiles and drones our way. That's when we responded. Till then, we didn't. So we are not doing it. Look, you've seen a Russia-Ukraine war. One of the countries has a nuclear weapon. They've been fighting for 2.5 years. There's been far more devastation and destruction taking place, and yet there has been no resort to nuclear threats or nuclear weapons or whatever. I think that India-Pakistan is way, way, way short of that. We're talking in this case about an 88-hour conflict. We didn't even engage any ground troops. I don't think either country was able to penetrate the airspace of the other. It was drones, missiles, artillery shells, this sort of stuff. And it was a battle in some ways also between defense systems, in which I'm pleased to say we seem to have come out of it rather better, because there are no reports of any extensive damage in India, whereas lots and lots of downed drones and downed missiles have been found on the ground. None of them have done any major damage. So if you want to compare defense systems, that's maybe the more interesting comparison, not nuclear systems.
Could you elaborate on the nature of recent conversations between India and China in the context of maintaining regional peace and security?
Well, recently, I would not say there have been any significant conversations. There was a significant thaw in the tense relationship between our countries, starting with September of 2024, when our foreign minister met his counterpart, our national security advisor met his counterpart, the generals on both sides talked to each other, and there was a certain agreement reached to ease some of the tensions on the border that had begun when China killed 20 of our soldiers on the border in June 2020. Now, that process of thawing had begun barely 7 months ago, when this particular unpleasant terrorist incident and subsequently the conflict with Pakistan, even for a few days, erupted, during which time China was unconditionally supporting its all-weather friend, Pakistan, including in the Security Council on things like the statement one of my colleagues has mentioned. So I don't think that we've had much cause to talk to them very recently. But the earlier process of thawing reflected a strategic choice on the part of both countries to dial down tensions and cooperate. And I think they will now have to see whether in the wake of what has happened, one can just go back to business as usual, or whether further discussion and dialogue is required. I think this is a process which at the moment is beyond the remit of my colleagues on this delegation and me. But I can say that there was a process that was very positive along the lines that your question asks, but it didn't frankly get revived after the 22nd of April.
Ambassador Sandhu, in the context of the Quad, do you believe India's participation has translated into strategic support during security crises, or does it remain largely a maritime and economic framework?
See, the Quad has been a developing story. You know from where it came and how it has moved. It's a much wider partnership. I think during the COVID period we saw, and that process is moving ahead. From what I have read, the next foreign ministers meeting is going to take place in Washington soon. And there are a number of clear projects, especially in technology and many other areas, healthcare, that Quad is undertaking. So I presume that will continue further. And that process, which began years ago, but actually intensified during President Trump's first term, further deepened during President Biden's term. So I'm sure the second term of President Trump will see its maturity further.
Again, related to Operation Sindoor, but related to press freedom. In the case of Operation Sindoor, a 19-year-old student who wrote a social media post was first suspended and then arrested, even though she removed her post and apologized, prompting the High Court in Bombay to describe her detainment as absolutely shocking, according to the Hindustan Times. What does that tell us about the state of free speech in India today?
Who are you asking this question to?
Mr. Deora, would you like to?
Well, I don't know if we have a system that the courts work, and unlike other countries, if a state government has engaged in a wrongful arrest, somebody can take recourse from the courts. So, I mean, look, we are the largest democracy. We are the most diverse democracy, and we are a federal structure where our judiciary works. So, I think that we've got everything going for us. And if you compare what the scenario looks like around the neighborhood, we are really truly the most vibrant democracy.
So, Dr. Tharoor, why is it so tough to sell India as a victim of terror to the West? For most Westerners, it's a basic understanding
Victim of terror.
that their government will stand against terrorism. So what's the missing link here? The fact that India had to send 7 delegations after the operation says a lot about how India has failed on building consensus on a topic like terrorism.
That's an interesting way of seeing it, because our experience in our meetings has not implied any lack of credibility or any non-receptivity to our message at all. So had your question been well grounded, we would have probably had some pushback or some skepticism or some negativism even, but we didn't. And we're talking about fairly wide range of countries. I mean, I realize that Guyana is not the United States, and that you know, Panama or Colombia or Brazil all have independent characters. But in every country, we've encountered government officials, legislators, think tankers, and media, and of course, members of the general public. And I can't think of a single example, can you, where we had any skepticism or any difficulty selling the message. Some of the details we were giving them opened their eyes, but some of the, I mean, not one person said, we don't really believe this, or we think you're spinning a yarn or whatever. This is why Pakistan is now following in our wake to say we are also victims of terrorism. But if I can quote a former American Secretary of State who famously said, well, you can't breed vipers in your backyard and expect it to bite only your neighbors. That's what the Pakistanis did, sadly. And the result now is that they are being bitten too. I mean, we all know that, for example, the Taliban movement, and in fact, by and large, all these terror organizations were created by the Pakistani military and ISI and so on for specific target purposes. There were some units created to hit India. There were some that were created to take over Afghanistan. They wanted to do damage on both sides, on both of their borders. And ironically, one group has now broken up and started hitting Pakistan. The so-called Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is an offshoot of a terror movement initially incubated by Pakistan that's turned against its masters, just as Dr. Frankenstein discovered. You build a monster, you can't control it. That's what's happened to Pakistan.
In fact, this morning, in fact, our meetings on the Hill, in private and in public, congressmen and senators were very clear in supporting our stand. And so as I said, the point of credibility, forget about the point of credibility, the point of you did the right thing, you have every right to defend yourself, as do we. So that's all we've encountered in these 5 countries.
The two consistent themes that have come out in all of our meetings. And yesterday I was talking to a couple of MPs who were part of the other delegations, including in Islamic countries. Two consistent themes. One, they're unequivocally in support of India and India's position against zero tolerance for terrorism and our counter-terrorism measures. Second, every single country that we spoke to is extremely enthusiastic about engaging with India in a multiple other aspects. What can they engage with Pakistan? They want to do trade with India. They want to do technology with India. Countries like Guyana said, we are an extraordinary friend of India. Indian companies need to show more initiative to come here and help us out. Panama, we still remember, even while we were exiting the office of the president of Panama, he said, when will you be bringing the IIT to Panama? The same thing was with Brazil, from agro-technology to yoga, Ayurveda, harnessing India's digital stack. Every country is keen to do business with India, to talk trade with India, to talk future with India, because we bring a multi-dimensional value addition to the world.
So, Ambassador Sandhu, and to all of you, basically, we always get, voices of support, like, whenever something terrible happens in India. But it doesn't go much beyond that. I mean, the Mumbai attacks, the killers still roam free. Although when Prime Minister Modi was here in the joint statement, India and US always say that, we need justice for the Mumbai attacks, in which 6 US citizens also died. Again, when Prime Minister Modi was here earlier this year, there was a joint statement. But it doesn't translate into any real pressure on Pakistan. There's no movement.
So I think what you are alluding to is something which should make everybody in the United States stand up. That terrorism, which is hitting everyone, including the United States. And look at the thread of most of the terrorist activities from here. Right from the shooting outside the CIA in the late 90s to now. Some thread comes from Pakistan. And you were talking about the trade. What is the biggest export which Pakistan has today? Terrorism? Is that the focus they are going to go towards? So it's time that United States and other countries, when the leadership comes here, and that's why I mentioned Mr. Bhutto should be looking very seriously at curbing terrorism in Pakistan, if he can. If the Field Marshal allows him, or maybe tomorrow Super Field Marshal. Look, what is very important, you also asked another question, that were we sending a message to China? No, we were sending a message to the terrorists, to terrorism as a policy. But what is the message coming out from there, from China? Does the United States need to take a look at that? There is a China-Pakistan axis. So I think these are some of the issues certainly that should take. And I also pointed out to you, look at the relationship, look at the depth of United States-India relationship. Look at the partnership which stretches across. And same is the issue, as my colleague just mentioned. All the 4 countries we went to, each one asked for an IIT to be established there. That's towards which you need to urge Mr. Bhutto to take his country towards, since his father is the president of the country.
Just to add to what Ambassador said, in 1996, India proposed the CCIT, the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism in the United Nations. We were the country that sponsored this idea. But unfortunately, even till today, there hasn't been a consensus around that to define in international terms what terrorism means and to come up with an international framework to go after those who sponsor it, fund it, and curb terrorism. I think that's a very important direction towards all countries coming together. While we were in Brazil, we learned that India and Brazil is working towards a bilateral agreement on combating terror, which is, I think, a very encouraging, important step for both of these countries. I have this 3-4 page list that mentions a list of major terrorist attacks affecting the United States and with connection with Pakistan. More than 32 incidents mentioned here. So the world needs to take note that the terror that is emanating from Pakistan is not just a threat to the immediate geography, but is a threat to the whole world.
Right. Well, I mean, you mentioned that all the visits that you've had, everybody supports India against terror, everybody wants to cooperate with India in different sectors. But do you see there being a growing consensus that Pakistan is a terrorist state, something that President Bill Clinton contemplated announcing during Kargil?
Look, I mean, I think the Pakistan situation is such a mess that I would not want to venture a simple answer. I think that we have a peculiar situation where there is a nominally elected civilian government, but the reins are held by the military, where the most popular politician is in jail and has been for a couple of years and continues to attract mass adulation while still in jail. There are all sorts of things going on there, and the Pakistanis go around saying, we're helpless, we ourselves are victims of terrorism, because indeed you have the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan that's attacking the army and the civilian government installations and so on. So the country is frankly in a mess. To call it a terrorist state would be to imply that all of them are complicit. I think half the time one organ of Pakistan doesn't know what the other organ is doing. And there's a lot of this kind of confusion, which also makes it very difficult to talk to them. I will say that if the Pakistan government wants to be taken seriously as a responsible state, then the task for it is very clear. Dismantle the existing infrastructure of terror. Shut down every one of these terror training camps. Ban each of these organizations. Close their bank accounts. Arrest their leaders. There are 52 names in the list of the United Nations Terrorism Committee. Arrest all 52 of them. Put them in bars. Prosecute them seriously and not in the frivolous fashion we've seen after the Mumbai attacks. I mean, there are things that Pakistan can do in order to actually be respected for this kind of thing, but it won't do them. It's not doing them. And this is our biggest problem, Poonam. We would much rather not waste time on this issue, to be honest. We all have better things to do in India. But as long as Pakistan continues to incubate this kind of terror, these units, these terrorist groups that come and do this kind of colossal damage and cost lives in our country, then we'll have to. We'll have to respond exactly as we've done before, as we've done from the 7th to the 10th of May, and Pakistan should realize there will be a price to pay for terror. They cannot just walk across the border and kill our people and get away with impunity.
All right, before I ask the final question, I'm just going to take a moment to thank the Headliners team leader, Jen Judson, Headliners team members, Sehun Kim, who's sitting right here, and Club Executive Director Diya Saji and the entire club staff, Cecily, Madison, I don't know if you're here, for making this possible. And I'm going to ask Rohit and Sehun to come join me. Can you come up? Yes. So to present to our speakers today, the coveted.
Thank you. Well, I'm a tea drinker, so I'm very happy to have a mug. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
National Press Club mug.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very nice water bottles and.
Yes, the water bottles too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
And for our final question,
Oh, final
I
question.
thought this was your final act.
we do this before the final
Made in
question.
the USA.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Trump would be very happy with that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay. So final question to you, Dr. Tharoor. Do you feel India has been firm enough in its response to the constant mediation claimed by the US president? It's a question that your own party continues to ask back home. Just yesterday, the leader of your party, Rahul Gandhi, said Modi surrendered to President Trump.
Sorry, what was the last one there?
That Modi surrendered to President Trump.
Look, all I can say is that we have enormous respect for the American presidency and the American president. All we can say for ourselves is that we have never particularly wanted to ask anyone to mediate. As I said, we have no real difficulty in speaking the same language as the Pakistanis. As long as they use the language of terrorism, we will use the language of force, and that doesn't require a third party. If, on the other hand, they were to dismantle the infrastructure of terrorism, we can talk to them. If they take serious actions to show that they want to restore normal relationships with us, we can certainly talk to them again without needing an intermediary. So it's not in any way a negative comment about the goodwill of people. During this conflict, as I said, in any case, India didn't need persuading to stop. No one needed to tell us stop because we were telling them. The moment Pakistan stops, we are prepared to stop. So if they in turn then told the Pakistanis, you better stop because the Indians are willing to stop, and that was what they did, then that's wonderful gesture on their part vis-a-vis Pakistan, but only Pakistan and they can tell us exactly what happened. With us, all we can say is that we know in our conversations some of these things didn't come up. But I want to say this in a very constructive spirit. We have an enormous respect for the US, and we have a much more important, valuable, strategic partnership with Washington that we wouldn't want to jeopardize over a matter of detail. We are interested, we're talking at the moment about a number of areas of cooperation. We're interested in enhancing all of that. So small matters can go by and we can focus on tomorrow.
As far as the political question is concerned, I would just like to express my admiration for Dr. Tharoor, who I've known for a long time. He always puts country before party.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all for joining us today, Dr. Tharoor, Mr. Deora, Mr. Surya, and Ambassador Sandhu. So wonderful to see you in Washington again. We know you all have a very busy schedule while you were in town, and I have another meeting directly after this. So I'm going to ask that everybody please remain seated while our guests leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.